And if it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it.
Major breaking news. The Air Canada strike is over.
Less than 24 hours. That's how long it took for the labor dispute between Air Canada and the Flight Attendants Union to end with a tentative deal once Air Canada realized that the union were going to abide by their right to strike. So in this video, I'm going to go over just a quick timeline of what happened here and the big lesson coming out of this, showing you how much power we have as the working class when we band together and fight against those that control our lives. So it all starts with my last video, which I'm not going to break down all the details here. Obviously, that was a long video. But if you want every single detail, including how the flight attendants were being screwed, go watch that video. I will link to it below the video. And I don't normally do a video on a similar topic, 2 videos in a row. But the result here was so spectacular that this has to be used as a lesson going forward. So just to start here, Air Canada, quick timeline, ended their negotiation with the union about a week ago, saying they want binding arbitration. At that point, the flight attendants said that they're going to go on strike. They go on strike. About 12 hours later, the government swoops in with Section 107 of the Labor Code, saying that this gives us the ability to force you back to work and seek binding arbitration. Now, I went through this in the previous video. I won't read through it here, but this is Section 107. It's very vague for obvious reason because it allows the minister to essentially do whatever the hell they want based on these vague terms. So unions are currently trying to fight this in court, but until that happens, it's good to see that workers are standing up to it regardless. So despite the declaration by the CIRB, which is the Canada Industrial Relations Board, that flight attendants were illegally striking after they ordered them back to work, they remained striking. Now, worth noting here, the CIRB, who's the arbitrator here, is chaired by a former Air Canada legal counsel. This person worked with Air Canada executives directly for years. Clear conflict of interest here. But putting that aside, here you have the CUPE national president, Mark Hancock at the time, coming out with his reaction to the CIRB order to go back to work despite not having a deal.
This is the CIRB order. Here's what I'm supposed to do. I'm expected to say, stand down. I'm expected to direct you to go back to work. I'm expected to end this strike. When this strike would end. I said it clearly then, and I will say it clearly now. This strike will end when we get a collective agreement that works for our members.
Just incredible. Knowing he and his members have the right to strike, he tears up the order to go back to work, saying they're not going to go back to work until they have a fair deal. And that same day, the head of the Canadian Labour Congress comes out to say, tonight the heads of Canada's unions met in an emergency session to stand united behind Air Canada flight attendants and defying the government's unconstitutional attack on workers' rights. Other unions came out in support of the flight attendants. On top of that, I have the breakdown in my last video, but public opinion was also with the flight attendants. So the next day, the CUPE national president doubled down, saying that he is not going to go back to work and that he's willing to go to jail over it.
We're going to stay strong. We're going to stay committed to making sure that those workers can do the job that they love doing and actually be able to afford a roof over their heads, to afford caring for their families. And if it means folks like me going to jail, then so be it. If it means our union being fined, then so be it. We're looking for a solution here. Our members want a solution here, but that solution has to be found at a bargaining table.
So I'll get to the Air Canada executive's priceless reaction to that in a minute here. But in the midst of all this, the government was trying to do damage control. So Jobs Minister Patty Hajdu came out with this tweet and this caption saying nobody should be expected to work for free. Speaking of how flight attendants work for free, they don't get paid unless the plane is moving. So there was actually a Twitter note to this saying Patty Hajdu recently enacted Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code that forces Air Canada flight attendants back to work, forcing them back into the condition where they were working for free. But she goes on to share this. I'll play this in the window. It's on 1.5 speed because it's not worth hearing at normal speed.
On the weekend, I referred the Air Canada dispute to the Relations Board. Both parties, the union and the corporation, said they were at an impasse. But it's not too late to get a deal. In fact, the corporation and the union could sit down today and find a path forward together. And that will result in the best deal. Which is
an incredible thing to say when you were attempting to force flight attendants back to work. What kind of deal are flight attendants going to get if Air Canada executives know that they don't have to worry about a strike? When you allow corporations to rely on the government to come in and end a strike, what motivation is there for there to be a good faith agreement, good faith negotiations with the union? Why would they ever act in good faith if they know it doesn't matter what happens because the government's going to force them to work anyways, so they're going to take whatever deal we give them? This is why it was so important for the union and other unions to come out and support them, to continue striking despite the order. So this is where we get to the reaction now from, this is the Air Canada CEO, Michael Rousseau, and just completely giving away the whole game here.
But you didn't make any provisions before to ensure that passengers, or at least some of them, would get to where they're going?
Well, we thought, obviously, the Section 107 would be enforced and that they wouldn't illegally avoid the Section 107.
Right. So you made no provision because you didn't realize the union would do this.
They gave us no indication they would do this.
Right.
It is amazing. The Air Canada CEO admits that they were relying on Section 107. They were relying on the government to end the strike, which is why they made no provisions for their customers because they figured there wouldn't be a strike, meaning they were never worried about a strike at all because they knew the government would come in and save them. And that's why the union saying, hell no, we're not going back to work, is such an important moment, not just for the flight attendants and for this union and this labor fight, but for all unions. You have the right to strike. If the government attempts to try and end that with their vague Section 107, you can fight them on that because you have the right to strike. This is a moment where now future labor fights, corporations, executives are going to know that the unions have the power to continue striking even if the government attempts Section 107 to put them back to work. Meaning, there's less of a chance now for bad faith negotiations between executives and unions when they understand there's actually a real actual threat of an actual strike. So this quote is amazing as well. This is also from the Air Canada CEO from Reuters here. Quote, "We're still amazed by the fact that CUPE is openly not following the law." And that is very disappointing from our perspective. Air Canada shares closed down 3%. Less than a day later, what happens? Air Canada flight attendants reach tentative deal to end strike. Once an actual strike was on the table and they knew the government wasn't going to save them, they were forced to negotiate with the union and reach a deal. Absolutely incredible. As the president of the Canadian Labour Congress writes here, Air Canada flight attendants, members of CUPE National, have delivered a decisive blow to employers who think they can sidestep fair bargaining by hiding behind Section 107 of the Canada Labour Code. This is a lesson moving forward. We have power when we band together, not just the union itself and them standing up for their right, which is fantastic, but the fact that other unions came out in support of them. And they also had the public on their side as well. This is a pivotal moment going forward for future labor fights, and I hope we all learn from it.